y'all? This is Tanya. And today I am doing a video as a correction. I had to make some corrections for myself of some information I put out, and I also need to make some other corrections that I feel are important for us to at least just acknowledge, because being a part of this indigenous community, I'm seeing that there's a lot of people that say that some of our people were not enslaved, or a better word that some of us have declared it, prisoners of war. So like some people were saying that that's not what happened, that it was not true. I can't say every American darker complected person did not go through being a prisoner of war up until 1866. I can't say that that was everyone, because it was not everyone, but it was definitely some. Now, this man right here, his name is B.C. Franklin, Buck Colbert Franklin. This is a cousin of mine. We share some grandparents together. And it was brought to my attention that I referred to him as B.C. Franklin Jr., but he's the senior. We have a lot of Buck Colbert Bucks in our family, and I was getting him mixed up with his son, and so I wanted to publicly apologize for misleading anybody if I did. And I did want to talk about, the quote-unquote folks that say that there was not, a form of chattel enslavement happening, because it's just not true. It's just not true. There are people that were, and please don't disrespect my ancestors and what they went through before, by just, looking differently at the situation, us being indigenous. I get it. But there were some people that were enslaved, and it was not the sweet kind all the time. So, and if you guys don't know, Buck Colbert Franklin was an attorney. He's most notably known for defending the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. One of his siblings, it looked like to me, if I got my family tree right at this point, it looked like one of his siblings could have been, or definitely was. He did pass May of 1921 in Tulsa, so I'm assuming that one of his brothers did. I think he was on the ground. He survived. But we would have to read his book, his autobiography, if we wanted to know that, and from his point of view. And there is a B.C. Franklin Park in Tulsa to this day, because he made such an impact on the community. And his son is a great historian, one of his sons, because he's got a junior, and he's got John Hope Franklin as one of his sons. So if you want to be inspired by what he's done on your reparations journey, please do. And I am recording this whole thing right now. Okay, just making sure. So anyway, I said that, and then I also wanted to talk about our people that were part of the Indian Pioneer Papers. There are some people that definitely were enslaved or the prisoners of war because of the conquering of their people here on U.S. soil. Okay, whether that is people that came from the continent of Africa over here, or people that were from various tribes over here as well. So I did want to just take a look at this right here. This is digital.libraries.ou.edu. This is out of the University of Oklahoma, and this is the Indian Pioneer Collection, and I had searched for the word freedman under there, and I do see some of my ancestors' names in their surnames, because it doesn't look like I have anybody actually that took part other than B.C. Franklin that I see here. But let me read a little bit of this interview with Wesley McCoy, and then I'll go back and maybe I can find cousin BC's. Okay, so it says, I am a freedman, 81 years old, and I act as a sort of informal chief or leader for the freedmen in this section. I am usually called upon to represent them in business matters involving land grants and the like. I am mostly Negro, of course, but I have some Choctaw blood too. Both my mother and father were part Indian, and I figure, roughly speaking, that I am around half Choctaw or such a matter. I was born on July 4th, 1856. I was born near Red River in what was then Kiamichi County, Indian Territory. My father was Jerry Williams, but after the Civil War we took the name McCoy because that had been the name of father's master. I don't know how old he was or where he was born, but he died during the Civil War and was buried on the place belonging to mother's master. Mother's maiden name was Eva Carney. I'm not sure, but I believe she was born back in Alabama or Mississippi, somewhere before the Choctaws were brought to Oklahoma. She must have been born about 1830, for she was 52, she said, the year she died in 1882. By then, she and I were living close to Scullyville, and she is buried there. My mother and father lived 3 miles apart when I was born, and afterwards too, because they had different masters. McCoy, father's master, ran a small county store and traded with the Indians. I'm like, okay, which Indians? But okay. He was about half Choctaw himself. Mother and I lived in a log cabin on the farm owned by her master, a man named Caffrey. We were 3 miles north of McCoy's place and about 7 miles northwest of Hugo. This Sam Caffrey had a blacksmith shop and a store too. He was a white man. Practically all other neighbors were Indians then. Not all of them had slaves, but quite a few did. I was so young when we left that section of Choctaw Nation that I cannot remember many of our neighbors' names. One man, though, was called Peter Peachlim. I think he was the sheriff of Kiamichi County, and I recall one family named Maley. Mr. Caffrey was the only man in our community who farmed on a large scale. Most of the Indians planted only an acre or two of corn and vegetables for their own use, and they hunted deer, turkey, and wild hogs for meat. But Caffrey had 100 acres in his farm, and the majority of this was under cultivation. He sowed all kinds of grain like oats and wheats and planted corn. He didn't raise any cotton. I don't remember anyone then who did. Caffrey also raised fruit, beans, peas, cabbage, and all sorts of vegetables. He had cattle, hogs, sheep, and goats. Mother and I lived in a one-room log cabin. There was a clapboard roof, a dirt floor, and a stick and mud chimney. We had no windows at all. Mr. Caffrey had a dug well where we got water. We were enough Indian to eat the Choctaw dishes like Tom Fuller, made from crushed and fermented corn, and benaha, or shook bread, cornbread made from squaw corn, beaten into meal at home with a mortar and pestle, pashofa, which is Tom Fuller with meat added. We ate lots of meat too. Venison, beef, pork, turkey, chicken. A lot of our clothes were homemade. Mother could card, spin, and weave. I was about 8. Then the year father died. That was in 1864. I remember a battle that occurred that year. I didn't see the actual fighting, but I was near enough to hear the cannons. This battle was near Old Perryville. Stan Waite, Sam Cooper, and a Colonel Williams were the commanding officers. The Federals won, and I remember seeing the Southern Army in disorganized retreat. It was composed of about half Indians and half white men, Texans. Some were barefoot, some hatless, many wounded. In 1867, after the war was over and we were freed, Mother and I went to live in Scullyville County, about 2 miles west of Fort Smith. We lived between Arkansas River and Poteau, in the Poteau, close to where they ran together. We lived for a while with my grandfather, Jerry Carney, and I remember helping him hoe corn when I was 11. I never went to school until I was about 12. In 1870, we moved over west of Scullyville, close to a place on the Fort Smith Stringtown Stage Road. This place was called Brazil Station. I have often seen the stagecoaches traveling over this road. They were big, awkward things. A driver sat upon top and passengers rode inside. So, I mean, I can keep on going because he has more that he had to say. If this is his actual words, but I think that it is, to be honest. And he there's a lot in this one. I want to read a little bit more, but I'll do that on my own time. I don't want to spend too much time in this video looking at his story alone. I will put in Franklin so I can see if I can read a little bit. This is a really good resource of Cousin BC's story, and I know his is only 3 pages, so Okay, my people come from Mississippi. My grandfather belonged to the Bernies back there, and we were then. I mean, and when they came to this county in the 40s, they brought my grandfather with them as a slave. My father, David, belonged to Wesley C. Birney, brother of Ben Birney, who later became governor of the Chickasaw. My mother was Minnie. She was a most unusual colored woman. She was owned by the Culvers and Pitchlands of Mississippi. They were Choctaws. They raised my mother and allowed her every privilege of their own people. She was a Bible student. My parents were married after the war. I received my first schooling at the Old Dawes Academy, 12 miles north of Ardmore. This Negro school was founded by white missionaries of the Baptist Church. We had some white missionary teachers. After that, I attended Roger Williams University at Nashville, Tennessee. It burned down, and the site was bought by whites, and the Peabody Institution is there today. My wife was a teacher. We are both college graduates. I completed my law course long ago. We have 3 children, of whom I am very proud. Mozella Franklin Jones, A.B., West Virginia State College, a teacher at Dunbar School, Tulsa, Oklahoma for 4 years, Buck Colbert Franklin Jr., and A.V. from Flake University, and a principal of a 6-room school at Bixby. John Hope Franklin, 23, and got his AB from Flake, or maybe that's supposed to be Blake, or Fisk. Maybe it's Fisk. In 1935, master's degree from Harvard. In 1936, has completed his residence work at Harvard and is now ready to get his PhD. That is not bad. That is not a bad record for grandchildren of slaves. Okay, he came up, he dipped and did it. Him and his wife and his kids, and I'm proud of the legacy that Cousin BC has for our family. So I just wanted to make sure that I have corrected what I had said before, because he is not the junior, he's the senior. And now, like I said before, some of our people were, prisoners of war. Not everybody was free. Now, I tried to go back and listen to the Library of Congress, people talk. I'm only going to play like a small snippet of this. I don't know if you guys are even going to be able to hear it, because I know I cannot decipher what is being said on these, this Library of Congress, slave narratives. And like I said, I like to say, I want to change it from saying enslaved. No, we were prisoners of war. So, anyway. I don't know what was just said in the last 24 seconds of me playing that. It's supposed to be an interview with Susanna Rebecca Wright Thompson, Oldham's, Virginia, in 1935, after she was enslaved. It was very, very hard for me to make that out, but it is there at loc.gov. You can just do a Google search for slave narratives, but I don't know about all of that. Okay, I just know that some people were definitely enslaved. And I also wanted to talk about, where things, this right here, this Theta Purdue, she wrote this book, The Legacy of Indian Removal, and she talks about in this book, now you have to get either be going to school or have like your library stuff to sign in and read the Journal of Southern History, but it is something that might be of interest, because even after Indian removal, well, let me see if I can go to that video right now and play it. I appreciate you guys. I hope that you're having a good time watching this video. You did not have to come and spend any time with me today, but you did, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. I just want to make sure that I was, telling the truth about my family's history. I'm not saying it's the history for every person that was in that is a descendant of American Indians, but I will say that it is definitely something that happened with some of our people. So I'm trying to get back to this lady's video. Where's that previous video? Let me try to search. Yes, okay, Theta Purdue. Now, within the first 10 minutes, she's going to tell us something, so this is for educational purposes only.
Have you been told you can't get high-speed internet where you live?
Oh,
well, you can with HughesNet Gen 5.
Let's skip that, move this into theater mode, and let her talk for a minute.
As attendees at the Trail of Tears Association annual meeting, you know, of course, that 5 tribes were removed from the southeast in the period between 1830 and 1842. The Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw Creek, and Seminole nations. What you may not know is that these were not the only removals during the period. And you also may not know that the efforts to rid the South of Indians, to get all the Indians out of the region, in fact lasted much longer. That is, it was not simply an event of 1830 to 1842, but indeed extended over a century. Today, I want to broaden our consideration of the Trail of Tears. First of all, to include Native peoples other than the 5 tribes, and secondly, to examine removal over a far longer span of time. Such a consideration has important implications for our understanding of the past and of the dangers that continue to threaten American Indian nations. I'll begin with a very brief overview of the remnants of removed tribes that remained in the South, because although they remained at the end of the Trail of Tears, they remained under considerable pressure. Over time, however, they managed to reorganize themselves as tribes and secure federal recognition. Cherokees in North Carolina, who had received private reservations under an 1819 treaty and subsequently lived outside the Cherokee Nation, formed the nucleus of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, recognized by Congress in 1868. For the other 3 tribes that had remnants remaining in the South, federal recognition, that is a government-to-government relationship, came much later. Thousands of Choctaws who unsuccessfully sought reservations under their removal treaty remained in Mississippi, landless and impoverished until the United States stepped in after World War I and in 1945, after World War II, accepted the tribal constitution that formally established them as the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. In southern Florida, Indians who avoided capture in the Seminole War struggled to survive in the swamps and marshes. In 1957 and 1961, they constituted the Seminole and Miccosukee tribes under the Indian Reorganization Act. A private reservation granted under an 1814 treaty that ended the Creek War provided a land base in Alabama on which a community coalesced, one that the United States recognized in 1984 as the Porch Band of Creeks. As the dates of their formal organizations indicate, in the aftermath of removal, the United States did not officially acknowledge any of these remnants as tribes. And before World War II, only the Cherokees had a government-to-government relationship with Washington. The absence of formal governments and federal relations made these remnants vulnerable to exploitation by whites. For example, Jim Boy, a Creek headman, returned to Alabama in 1848, a decade after Creeks had been removed, to rescue Creeks left behind in his tribe's chaotic removal and enslaved by white planters. He saved 65 of his countrymen, but he failed to secure the freedom of at least 100 others. They simply remained in slavery.
Okay. Y'all hear that? Simply remained in slavery.
Little tolerance for racial anomalies, planters had converted previously free Indians into slaves and had driven home the message that the South aspired to be a region of free whites and enslaved people of color, regardless of whether their ancestry was Indian or African. The wholesale enslavement of Indians remaining in the South did not happen, but the federal government acted in concert with the states to turn the South into a biracial region by continuing to try to expel the remnants of removed tribes. In the 1840s, the federal government attempted to entice Choctaws, deprived of private reservations promised them in Mississippi, to leave the state by issuing scrip redeemable for public land.
Okay, so that's pretty good. I think that you can go back. This is put out by the National Trail of Tears Association, and I thought that it would be a good thing for you to know about it too. Shout out to this lady, Theta Purdue, for keeping it real about what was happening. And I also want to go ahead and go to this other website. Okay, it was this Wikipedia. Now, I know that most people is like, don't do Wikipedia, you gotta be peer reviewed, but if you guys look down at the references section, and I know that a lot of people can get some of these like edit, but these are very good sources here that I am showing. Down here at the bottom, lots of notes, lots of things that people have compiled. So just wanted to make sure I said that first. Okay, so it's a lot to read, y'all. It's a lot to read. The Yamasee Wars, the Indian Wars, and gosh, this actually was very, very good. But let's see. All servants imported and brought to the country who were not Christians in their native country shall be accounted and be slaves. All Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves within this dominion shall be held to be real estate. If any slave resisted his master correcting such slave and shall happen to be killed in such correction, the master shall be free of all punishment as if such accident never happened. So what was that, 1705? 1705. Let's see. So okay, when Europeans arrived as colonists in North America, Native Americans changed their practice of slavery dramatically, because if you go and you read like earlier parts of this, there was a form of slavery amongst Native American tribes or American Indians, but what they weren't is like perpetual, lifelong enslavement and all of that. So anyways, let's see. Native Americans began selling war captives to Europeans. You can find that in some of those treaties, like the Treaty of Hartford, 1638, with the Narragansett and the Mohegans. You might want to check that out. Anyway, to Europeans, rather than integrating them into their own societies as some had done before. So I mean, they could have been the first ones called Negro on today's U.S. soil. I don't know that yet, but these articles like this that like tell more of the story kind of gives us a way to understand this. Native Americans were enslaved by the Spanish in Florida and the Southwest under various legal tools. Okay, one tool was encomienda system. New encomiendas were outlawed in new laws in 1542, but old ones continued, and the 1542 restriction was revoked in 1545. Okay, so I guess we gotta look at whatever that word means. But I wanted to read down. Okay. As the demand for labor in the West Indies grew, the cultivation of sugarcane, Europeans exported enslaved Native Americans to the Sugar Islands. Historians Alan Galley estimates that between 1670 and 1715, 24 to 51,000 captives, prisoners of war, Native Americans were exported through Carolina ports, of which more than half were brought from then Spanish Florida. These numbers were more than the number of Africans imported to the Carolinas during the same period. Okay, so this is stuff that we need to know. A slave trade of Native Americans lasted until around 1730, which we already know that's not true. Miss Theta, Miss Purdue, whatever, said that it was still happening even in the 1840s and 50s. Okay, it gave rise to a series of devastating wars among the tribes, including the Yamasee War, which a lot of people were snatched up and kidnapped and put into slavery and were called Negro or mulatto, or maybe some of them kept their Indian heritage, but many were just mixed in and told that they had to be, Negro. The Indian Wars of the early 18th century, combined with the increasing importation of African slaves, effectively ended the Native American slave trade in 1750. Colonists found that the Native American slaves could easily escape as they knew the country. The wars cost the lives of numerous colonial slave traders and disrupted their early societies. The remaining Native American groups band together to face the Europeans from a position of strength. Many surviving Native American peoples of the Southeast region strengthened their loose coalitions of language group and joined confederacies such as Choctaw, the Creek, and the Catawba. For Catawba, for protection. Now, this is not the full truth, because we already know that the same thing definitely was happening in the 1830s, according to this woman's research. She is some historian from some major college around in the Southeast region. So she's not the only one that has said this stuff. I mean, but she definitely said it on camera. The Native American women were at risk of rape when they were enslaved or not. During the early colonial years, settlers were disproportionately male. They turned to Native women for sexual relationships. Both Native American and African American enslaved women suffered rape and sexual harassment by male slaveholders and other white men. And you know, I think they were also breeded together. I don't see why. I know that there is somewhere in here where it talks about the intermixing of the Indians and the African. Let me see if there's anything else that I can, because I know that there was American Southeast. Okay, so let's see. This American Southeast, which, you know, most of our people come from the Southeast that are making these valid claims, because it's very hard for me to not believe people when they say that their grandmothers and grandfathers and their relatives told them that they had Indian in their family. They weren't lying. They weren't lying. There was a mixture that happened. And some people were enslaved and some people were not. Excuse me. And so that's why we have to consider all parts of this. Carolina, which originally included today's North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, was unique among the North American English colonies because the colonists thought of slavery as essential to their success. In 1680, proprietors ordered the Carolina government to ensure that enslaved Native Americans had equal justice and to treat them better than African slaves. These regulations were widely publicized, so no one could claim ignorance of them. The change in policy in Carolina was rooted in fear that escaped slaves would inform their tribes and resulting in even more devastating attacks on plantations. The new policy proved almost impossible to enforce, as both colonists and local officials viewed Native Americans and Africans as the same, and the exploitation of both as the easiest way to wealth, though the proprietors continued to attempt to enforce these changes for profit reasons. Okay. So let me see if I can read down to something else. It was more profitable to have Native American slaves because African slaves had to be shipped and purchased, while Native captives could be captured and immediately taken to plantations. Whites in the northern colonies sometimes preferred Native American slaves, especially Native women and children, to Africans because Native American women were agriculturalists and children could be trained more easily. However, Carolinians had more of a presence for the Africans, preference for the African slaves, but also capitalized on the Indian slave trade, combining both. So, I mean, it was a lot of time for all these people to get mixed up. Okay, that's why a lot of people say, well, me personally, I can say that I know I'm quad. Okay, so I got American Indian, I got definitely African, Kenyan specifically, European, Scottish, Irish, French, and Italian, and then Asian as well. I got West Asian, and East Asian as well. Fiji, Malaysia, Philippines, yeah, all that. So, what do you call that? Sync racial. You know, some people, they may only have, most, I say, would be triracial, but some people are saying that they are only American Indian and they were never enslaved. And maybe some people, that is the truth for them, but I cannot say it for all of us. It was a lot of mixing that was going on during the time where the colonized people came over and took people as prisoners of war, both across the Atlantic through the Middle Passage, and people right here on their own land. So let me see. Let's see. Is there anything else that I wanted to draw out of here? Yeah. In the eastern colonies, it became common practice to enslave Native American women and African men, with a parallel growth of enslavement for both Africans and Native Americans. This practice also led to a large number of unions between Africans and Native Americans. This practice of combining African slave men and Native American women was especially common in South Carolina. Okay, if anybody has started doing their genealogy and has any ties to South Carolina, it's more than likely there is that mixture. And Native American women were cheaper to buy than Native American men or Africans. Moreover, it was more efficient to have Native women because they were skilled laborers, the primary agriculturalists in their communities. Okay, so we were the ones that was growing the food. During this era, it wasn't uncommon for reward notices in colonial newspapers to mention runaway slaves, speaking of Africans, Native Americans, and those of a partial mix between them. So you can read the rest of this. It's really, really long. Got a lot of stuff. And then there's this part, and that's where my people come in, to Oklahoma, and Indian removal and all of that. So, I mean, there's that too. they only give us a line here about the Trail of Tears, and yeah. And so it's got a lot of notes here, and I know people say don't trust Wikipedia, but if you want to go back into these different resources, they're all listed here. Okay, just so you have it. So, was there enslaved Native Americans? Yes. Was there enslaved Africans? Yes. Did they mix together? Yes. Okay, that's all I had to say. And it was not sweet and pretty all the time. That's all I wanted to tell you guys, is that it was not sweet and pretty all the time. So there's resources like Family Search that you could go on. Chief Janice, she's got a lot of stuff. She sent some links, and a couple days ago she had a live, I think it was called Masterclass, where she talked about some solutions. Please check out her channel. She's got a lot of good information. She's trying to help us get a hall of records so we can actually keep our own records. She gave us some links. This is one, web.archive.org, and talks about a lot of the different roles that your family members could have been on. Okay. Let's see. This Babel.Hathi Trust. It talks about the origin of some of these places, and yeah, hopefully it can be helpful when you're searching the areas where your people come from. So there's that. Indians at Work, library.si.edu. Through the Smithsonian, there are these Indians at Work volumes that go back to 1933, and you're more than welcome to look at that too. I don't know if that really helps the people that are freedmen of the 5 tribes here in Oklahoma, but it is there. And then we got the Bureau of Land Management, searching their records. Georgia Archives, Georgia, Carolina. I don't know if there is, I'm sure they got, I'm sure that they have a lot of information on their websites as well, especially with us reading that last little article there. I appreciate you guys hanging in there. If you made it through to this part of the video, you are a beast. You are awesome. Because it's a lot of information that you can uncover. There's the vault.georgiaarchives.org. A lot of roads lead back to Georgia and Virginia for our people. So, and you probably want to check out Virginia, because there's, yeah. What is this? Public Records, Public Record Office, Victoria. prov.vic.gov.au. Yeah, so this as well is a link that she gave us, and we need to be using the Freedom of Information Act, Immigration and Citizenship, NAA.gov.au. Oh, this is for Australia. The Australia part. Because for my family, it's been passed down, not on all sides, but on one side in particular, that we have a connection to the to Fiji. And I'm still trying to search that information, and there's some real interesting correlations between the people, the Aboriginals of Australia, and our people here. So you might find some information about some of your ancestors through this Australia. Chief Janice goes into it a little bit more than I can here because I don't have enough of the facts. I just know what my family told me. They also told us that we were Cherokee and Blackfoot, and you know, a lot of people are like, Blackfoot and Cherokee never mixed, but okay. I can't argue with anybody. I just know what Grandma said. So anyway, npgallery.mps.gov is another source here about different cemeteries. This Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty site. It's 21 pages, got a lot of stuff in it, and yeah, landmark nomination. Yeah, so I haven't gone through and dived into each of these websites. I mean, the blm.gov, like, I definitely have gone into that. But I wanted to just say that for sure, some of us were enslaved. I can't say it was everybody. And I need to stop saying enslaved. We need to say that they were captives and prisoners of war, because that's really what it was. POWs, not enslaved, because, or slaves, because that is the, that's the group that today occupies Slovakia. So we're kind of taking their name. Let them have their name, is my opinion. Because we have so many other names that we got to go through and deal with and make sure that one is right for us. Anyway, I am done with this video. I will see you in the next one, guys. Thank you so much for sticking in there, hanging with me, learning with me, and yeah, I love you, and I will see you in the next one, and hopefully I can be more consistent. I've just been learning so much I've been learning so much stuff. Whew. It's a lot. It's a lot. But let me end this here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.